This video is about how liberals are the main aggressors. We are in the disinformation phase of the age of enlightenment that has never ended, because those who are pushing Enlightenment era philosophies are not done indoctrinating the rest of us to the point where their view is dominant. It began with Christianity and the greatest man of all time, a legend named Jesus. Some say his name is Isa. Some say, I believe, Yeshua. Okay. Whatever his name was, it began with him and his faithful. And then the rise of the universal church of the Roman Empire, the Roman Catholic Church, which arguably was the first church, but certainly at least one of the first official churches, which became a state-sponsored, pagan-infiltrated church. So there was secret societies there from the beginning. So first, the Christians lost. Then the rise of the corrupted by secret society Catholic Church, which also included people who were authentic Christians, mind you. And then, after hundreds of years, over 1,000 years, to fast forward, came the rise of the Crusade era secret societies, then Masonry, which by the 1500s had certainly given rise to Protestantism and gave fuel and a secret society network to allow for the rise of all anti-Christian societies along with Protestantism. Mind you, there are some real Christians who are Protestants. And I consider someone who adheres to Christian morality and is not swayed by liberal forces and Enlightenment era forces a real Christian. Someone whose actual philosophy is the morality in the Bible. Some of them are Catholic Christians, some of them are Protestant Christians, what have you. Anyway, so you have the rise of Masonry, which gave the Protestants the upper hand in the Reformation. And then you had the Counter-Reformation. The Council of Trent, I believe it was called, that gave rise to the Society of Jesus, which propagated and propounded and expounded on papal infallibility, since they were Christian, or rather Catholic, scholars. And then Satanists said, aha! Now is our time. Now that they're fighting with each other, we're going to come in as the mediators. These occultists, these pagans, these Satanists, these Talmudic Jews. Weishaupt, a Jesuit Satanist of Jewish descent, founded the Order of the Illuminati, which gave the Satanists of powerful position as mediator, as they infiltrated the Masons, the Jesuits, and the Catholic Church, and every major movement in the world. On record, Library of Congress, mainstream fucking history when it comes to historians. Not what's taught to the sheep, but historians doing scholarly, peer-reviewed research. Mainstream history, Illuminism, pragmatism, what have you. Rationalism. So they rationalized their philosophy of science, which was paganism, with a satanic twist from England, which resented Rome because they fought with the Romans. Do your Roman history. If you want to make it easier, watch a few documentaries or something, on YouTube. They fought with them. They were mad at them. They resented the Romans, Catholics, just like the pagans did, and the Jews. You following me? Okay. So now we are in the age of enlightenment still. It is not over. These Enlightenment era philosophies are still being propagated using powerful propaganda machines and infiltration and subversion and covert means. This is a monolithic, ruthless conspiracy, just like JFK said. It includes the military-industrial complex, just like Eisenhower said. And this is the disinformation phase. Why? Why, you might ask? Because there will come a point when the Satanists come out of the closet and tell you the truth. Because at that point, they will have pretty much complete control, and you will enter the information phase of the age of Luciferianism, or quote-unquote enlightenment or illuminism. Those Talmudic dogs, those communist, sadistic, eugenic fucking parasites. But anyway, without further ado, I give you some more references, sources, some more proof, valid sources. Okay. The same reason America's hiding from my top martial arts challenge is the same reason they're hiding from debates now. Because I've crushed the competition every time they step to the plate in a very definitive manner. Over 100 victories, no losses. Years of winning debates. Most people don't do their due diligence. Nobody knows everything about history. Even if they had read everything about history, which they haven't, they wouldn't retain it all. So let's look at some important parts of history. So we look at the history of Italy. France basically invaded Italy. They occupied Tuscany between March and July 1799. They were driven out by a violent peasant uprising, the Viva Maria, long live the Virgin Mary. This movement developed into a march on urban centers, assaults on Jewish residents, and a hunt for real or alleged local Jacobins. It also reestablished the power of the land-owning aristocracy and of the clergy. The Roman Republic fell in September 1799. The French resisted only in Genoa, while a large number of Italian Jacobins took refuge in France. Thus ended the revolutionary triennium. Okay, so the idea that the Age of Enlightenment was the age of freeing the peasants obviously was wrong. This is after the French Revolution. The people did not want these ideas forced on them. And the Masons and the enemies of God over time learned how to use propaganda and mind control to convince the masses that they were actually correct when they were actually anti-Christian, immoral dogs. So this was from Britannica, Roman Catholicism, the Age of Reformation and Counter-Reformation. So this is basically proof the Catholics' Counter-Reformation was right, except for the power of the Pope and the Trinity, which are two of the places I disagree with the Catholics about. The Pope's conservative nature was demonstrated most dramatically in his condemnation of Americanism. For those of you know that I see things in a similar fashion. It's more, with the Catholic Church, they're more mad about the power of the Pope, first and foremost, but they're also upset about almost exactly the same things that I'm upset about, which is the immorality of America, the Satanism, and so on. Anyway, he had difficulty comprehending the burgeoning Republic of the United States, American pluralism, and American Catholic praise for religious liberty. The controversy over Americanism arose from a French translation of a biography of Isaac Thomas Hecker, founder of the American Congregation of Priests, the Paulists. Hecker had sought to reach out to Protestant Americans by stressing certain points of Catholic teaching. But Leo understood this effort as a watering down of Catholic doctrine. Hecker also had used terms such as natural virtue, which the Pope suggested the Pelagian heresy. Because members of the Paulists took promises but not the vows of religious orders, many concluded that Hecker denied the need for external authority. Progressive Catholics in America advocated greater Catholic involvement in American culture, which some understood to mean that Roman Catholics should adapt its teachings to modern civilization. In Longínqua Oceani, 1895, Wide Expanse of the Ocean, Leo warned American church leaders such as the only cardinal in the American church, James Gibbon, Archbishop of Baltimore, not to exploit their unique system of separation of church and state, and in his pastoral letter, Testem Benevolente, 1899, Witnesses to Our Benevolence, he condemned other forms of Americanism. Gibbons denied that American Catholics held any of the condemned views, and Leo's pronouncement ended the Americanist movement and curtailed the activities of American progressive Catholics. So just like with the liberal progressive eugenicists, who basically changed liberalism into an even worse form of anti-Christian nonsense and brought forth the eugenic movement, the American progressive Catholics were seeking to align Catholic doctrine, twisted to do so, with American ideas such as eugenics. So when you look at the Catholic Church, you can't throw them all in the same category. Some of them, were very conservative, and some of them were liberal cowards who are seeking to bring more people into the church, and if they would have their way, they would completely compromise and destroy the church, including the current Pope. Completely destroy the church and change it to something else. What's the point of bringing them to Catholicism when you have to keep changing it to do so, right? This is consistent with Ricci and Weishaupt and these people who came from Catholic orders who wish to expand the sphere of influence of Catholicism first and foremost, and not maintain the purity and the validity of its doctrines. Okay, going back a little bit, when you look at the polemical Roman Catholic accusation, it says, the polemical Roman Catholic accusation, which the mainline reformers vigorously denied, reformers like Calvin and Luther, that these various species of conservative Protestantism, with their orthodox dogmas and quasi-Catholic forms, were a pretext for the eventual rejection of most of traditional Christianity, seemed to be confirmed by the emergence of the radical Reformation. So, and of course, they're just talking about the Reformation. Now, when you fast forward to where we are now, yes, the Protestants teamed up with all the enemies of the church, which just happened to be the enemies of Christian morality and God at the same time. It wasn't just Galileo, it was all the scientists, the alchemists, the witchcraft, the scientific pagans, the eugenicists. Where we are now is exactly correct. Bottom line is, the Roman Catholic Church has a much more respectable history of maintaining the authenticity of Christian doctrine than the Protestants do. Just how it is. So anyway, it goes on to say, the Anabaptists, as their name indicates, were accused by their opponents of rebaptizing those who had received the sacrament of baptism as infants. The Anabaptists advocated adult baptism and held that infant baptism was invalid. This was at its foundation a redefinition of the nature of the church, which they saw not as the institution allied with the state and embracing both the good and the wicked, but as the community of true believers who had accepted the cost of Christian discipleship by a free personal decision. Nevertheless, the Anabaptists retained in their doctrines of God and Christ the historical orthodoxy of the Nicene Creed. Those Protestants who went on to repudiate Orthodox Trinitarianism as part of the Reformation claimed to be carrying out more consistently than Luther or Calvin or the Anabaptists had done the full implications of the rejection of Roman Catholicism, which they all had in common. Okay, so basically, as they're altering the way things are done, it's more than just saying, hey, you know, the Pope is really a pagan or something, or the Pope is claiming to be the representative of God on earth, and that takes away from Jesus's role in the church. You know, these are things, just like with feminism, where you have real women's issues. There are real issues that the Catholics were doing wrong, but it really turned into a power struggle between the Catholic Church, which had it more right than these other people, and these people who really were interested in getting revenge. You know, as soon as make a long story short, let me keep it in a nutshell. As soon as there was a split in the Catholic Church and there was a lot of people rebelling against it, all the enemies of the church got together and sided with the Protestants. It's exactly what you would expect. I mean, people aren't really as smart and creative and imaginative as you might think. They're not as innovative as you might think, scientists included. They simply did what, you know, the enemies of Black Egypt did. They saw a split and they took advantage of it, and they ended up breaking down the church and defeating the church, but not God. And of course, Revelation says the same thing. So this conspiracy is not some concocted falsehood. This is actually mainstream, and I do mean mainstream, fucking history to all you namby-pamby ninnies who don't understand that. This is an ineluctable fact. You cannot avoid it. It's fucking incapable of being evaded. That's what it means. They thought they could bring a penitential or a new manner of reconciliation with God. I'm just going to hit you with a few of these vocabulary terms that I found interesting. You know, so Protestants are teamed up with Masons who have ostentatious means of bringing people in. You know, wowing people with science. Saying, oh, well, you know, we're going to show you the power of being a feminist and, you know, using your pussy power to get what you want, right? They're trying to impress people with show. And these people are polemics, you know. They master the art of controversy or disputation of controversy. So what the Protestants did ended up being favorable or propitious to the Satanist cause. You understand me? So the Council of Trent, which created the Jesuits, the Society of Jesus, right? Things had to be, you know, people ended up not just invoking the Spirit of the Lord to help them out, but they ended up convoking. They convoked. They called to a meeting people to help them out. The reason why I'm going over this vocabulary with you is because I put the fucking link in the comments and the description, and I want you to understand what they're saying the first time. I didn't understand all these words. Fuck the English language. Fuck cultural imperialism. And a special fuck you to Masonic, English, empire, big government, liberalism, age of enlightenment, cultural imperialism that the people routinely rejected because they're a bunch of sicko fucking international bankers. It was the bankers who did the age of enlightenment. So for these liberals to turn around and say, we love the, or we hate the bankers, and you're on their fucking side, you ninnies. Look at what happened in Italy. The people rose up and said, no, we don't want the people on top of the pyramid to tell us what to do. We want the church to advise us on what we should do. We want Christians, real Christians, as our mentors, not a bunch of bankers as our dictators, you fucking scum. Fucking lowly dogs. Godless trash. Anyway, the political and social prerogatives of the church were also threatened by the Enlightenment, especially when it became allied with the expanding claims of an autocratic, enlightened despotism The brotherhood cultivated by groups such as the Freemasons and the Illuminati, a rationalist secret society, constituted a rival to the feeling of community that the church had once provided. The Masonic alternative to the Catholic Mass even became the subject of an opera, The Magic Flute by Mozart. How many times have I told you they are scientists, pseudoscientists really, they are magic card bitches, esoteric Ebers, fucking plumbers. How many times? Every time I read anything about them, 100% confirms everything I've said my whole fucking life. Anyway, a key part of the article, complicating the predicament of the church in the ancient regime was the corrosive influence of the Enlightenment on the religious beliefs of much of the lay intelligentsia. Enlightenment rationalism took hold among many defenders of the political status quo. I say it again. Enlightenment rationalism took hold among many defenders of the political status quo. So the status quo that the bankers helped put in place, who were at odds with the clergy, okay, had defenders who were Enlightenment bitches. Just like the controlled opposition, age of Enlightenment, offspring, liberal fucking scum we have today. As well as among clerical scholars helping to produce the beginnings of critical biblical scholarship and of religious toleration. It would be an oversimplification, therefore, to put the Enlightenment unequivocally on the side of the critics and revolutionaries. How many times have I told you liberals and Masonic pussies are controlled opposition bitches? Period. Liberalism is the philosophy of controlled opposition bitches, and the true revolutionaries are Christians. When you're talking about the West. Moving on. So the Jesuits basically took on Confucianism in a synchronistic manner because of Ricci, R-I-C-C-I, a Jesuit, who was trying to win over Chinese converts. And this created problems with the church. The Portuguese crown, for example, expelled the Jesuits in 1759. France made them illegal in 1764, and the Spain and the two Sicilies took other repressive action in 1767. Opponents of the Society of Jesus, or the Jesuits, achieved their greatest successes when they took their case to Rome. Although Pope Clement the 13th, reigned in 1758 to 1769, refused to act against the Jesuits. In other words, gave clemency, which is a very common word we use today, right? Reportedly stating that they should be as they are or not be at all. His successor, Clement the 14th, whose election was urged by anti-Jesuit forces, issued a brief Dominus ac Redemptor, Lord and Redeemer, which suppressed the society for the good of the church. So a lot of these stupid Protestant Masonic dogs will say, oh, the Catholics and the Jesuits see things the same way as Masons. They're a bunch of syncretic, commonality-loving bitches that wish to compromise the integrity of Christian doctrine. This is a recurring theme. All the bitches who want to twist Christianity for their little political agendas and to make themselves feel good are on one side. On the other side are very conservative Catholics and people like me who see things almost the same way, except for when it comes to several big issues, such as, the Pope, whether the Pope is the Vicar of Christ, and the Trinity. Okay? So I'm not a Catholic, but I certainly see that they are more correct when it comes to these major issues. Now, I'm not saying the Catholic Church is the best Christian church. Don't know. But what I am saying, when it comes to the general war between the Catholics and the Protestants, the Catholics beat them hands down. All the conspirators are on the sides of the Masons and the Protestants. The Masons are a bunch of Protestants. The Americanism that the church was against, right? What are Americans typically? They are WASPs. white Anglo-Saxon Protestants, and they didn't like the Irish Catholic immigrants. They didn't like the Italian Catholic immigrants. Get up on your motherfucking history. You have the mafia, the Jesuits, the Masons, and all these Satanists and all these scumbags on one side. And you have the people who are conservative Catholics and people who want to maintain the truth and the Christian morality on the other side. It's just a fucking no-brainer. Anyway, and don't forget, there's a lot of Native Americans who think because the Jesuits helped them out, that magically they're the good guys. It's just like, you know, if Muslims who Satanists offered to protect during these kind of American pogroms that we're seeing, you know, the persecution of Muslims, you know, said, oh, these Satanists are so good. They were there for us when no one else was, and therefore we're going to stick up for them. Nonsense. They're a bunch of fucking sickos. You know? Just because someone helps you out doesn't mean they're the good guy. In fact, most of these people, especially in mental health, are the types of bastards who cause the problem and then turn around and give you a solution that makes you think like them and puts you on their side and under their auspices and control. Fucking scum. Alright, that's it for now. You read the rest of the article for yourself. I don't want to go on for too long. Make a long story short, thousands and thousands of sources later, you know, what I originally thought was true was true. Christian morality. That's why, I don't say the Catholic, I say Christian morality. I don't see things exactly the way they do. But I sure as hell hate the Masons more than they do. And they've been fighting against these people for a long fucking time, for hundreds of years. You know? and even the Society of Jesus, right? The Jesuits was founded in 1534. Not long after the Masons their movement really started building momentum, right? The Masons predate them by at least, I think they're in the 1300s or something, at least a couple hundred years or something. You know, after the Crusades, the Masons spring up. And then, you know, within a couple hundred years, the Jesuits are founded, and magically Ricci starts doing things the same way that the Masons did. With the Chinese Confucianism, just like the Masons with their checkered floor and the Chinese yin-yang. Making a mistake is one thing, refusing to correct it is another. Because of the Democratic Party's stance on Native American casinos and things of this nature, a lot of Native Americans have made the mistake of joining the Democratic Party and teaming up with other minority groups to take on a perceived white establishment that includes Christianity. There is a white establishment, but it does not include true Christians. For example, there were two types of Christians in the New World, if you will. And one of them were the types of people who rolled with big government. You know, what's a bigger government than an empire, right? Like the Spanish Empire and the Spanish colonists and conquistadors. The other were real Christians, such as myself, who live by principles. So, this is from, I'll put the link, Encyclopedia Britannica. Despite royal patronage, there were occasional clashes between Catholic churchmen and colonizers or traders because of the latter's mistreatment of the indigenous population. At times, Catholicism was able to temper the inhumanity of the conquerors. Foremost among the humane spokesmen for the indigenous peoples of the America was the Dominican Bartolome de las Casas, the apostle of the Indians, whose denunciations of European atrocities against the Native Americans became widely known. He was named Bishop of Chiapas, Mexico. Now, to understand the different secret societies and their different roles, you must understand first and foremost that the secret societies weren't the only ones who opposed the colonizers and the traders. It was Catholic churchmen in general. However, on this one issue, there were times when the Catholic hierarchy did not agree with those people who lived in the colonies. And part of this logically was because they simply weren't there. They were back in Rome twiddling their fucking thumbs. You know, they were back in the Vatican. You understand me? They weren't in the colonies. So they didn't have the same kind of first-person experiences. And just like with soldiers at war and the government, they're like, you know, they're given orders, they don't like the orders. They resent them a lot more than the people in the government because they're there seeing firsthand how these orders play out. And, you know, the Jesuits, for example, have been described as a military order, so to speak, whose influence in the state rivals their influence in matters of the church. So it's very interesting how natives have backed the liberals' call for a separation of church and state. Had there been a separation of church and state, who would have tempered, you know, the inhumanity of the conquerors? Christianity, in its pure form, was what kept native people from enduring a whole lot worse than they did. It was the state, it was the big government, and it was the ulterior motives of private groups in the church. Okay? Now this gets very complicated because it's not as simple as saying, well, it's this group or that group. It's the philosophies adopted by certain groups. When they started leaning toward a Masonic kind of merger between the state and liberalism, they were in the wrong. When they stayed true to the actual principles of Christianity and did not think about expanding the church's power, they were in the right. So to make a long story short, the Christians were the biggest advocates for the Native Americans in the Western world, by far. By far. It was the non-Christians and the Masons and the liberals who wanted to expand the power and bring in hatred for Christianity. So they conveniently twist history and turn the anger, you know, of Native Americans who quite often aren't very educated. You know, I don't mean them any offense, but let's face it, they're not very educated. All they know is Christians and white people came and all these Native Americans died. That's pretty much all they know about it. They don't know how, you know, the intricacies of history and the details. They don't know that the Christians were the ones sticking up for them, being fucking martyred and dying next to them, you know, and it was these non-Christian fucking liberal scoundrels who pushed the state and big government that were the ones killing them, especially the military. Let's look at the history of Mexico, for example. Who were the Mexican people but the descendants of the natives and the Spaniards? So when the Mexicans rebelled against Spanish colonization, how did they do it? Well, let's see what the Encyclopedia Britannica has to say about it. The inevitable reaction against the colonial powers took the form of independence movements and anti-clerical revolts. The case of Mexico is illustrative. Its rulers repeatedly prescribed Catholic education and promoted anti-clerical interests following the country's break from Spain in 1821. At the same time, the government declared that Mexico was a Catholic country, and thanks to the papal decision to allow the practice, assumed the responsibility, formerly held by the kings of Spain, of nominating bishops to their sees. In 1859, Benito Juarez declared the separation of church and state. A decade later, Mexico severed diplomatic relations with the Holy See. In 1917, 7 years after the start of the Mexican Revolution, the new government placed further restrictions on the church, and many bishops and clergy were forced into exile in the United States. Increasing persecution in the mid-1920s inspired the Cristero Rebellion, in which the peasantry, just like in Italy, it was the peasantry, without the support of the bishops, rose up in defense of the church. So when these Spaniards and these Freemasons from Spain and all these people that want the separation of church and state and all these Age of Enlightenment ninnies had broken away from Spain officially, but they were unofficially enforcing the anti-Christian policies of the enemies of the clergy in Spain, you know, started persecuting the Christians, the peasants rose up to defend the church. Despite the state's hostility toward the church, the Mexican people remained largely Catholic, though they blended some indigenous religious values and practices with Catholic forms and were often at odds with their own bishops. Now, why is that? Because there are secret societies, including the Jesuits, who were hanging around as a result of the Catholic presence. Remember, it goes back to, you know, this internal conflict in the church with these liberal dogs and these conservatives. Moving on. Tensions between church and state in Mexico continued for the next 2 decades and resulted in renewed persecution in the 1930s. After World War II, however, relations with the state improved and the church gained greater freedom. Developments following Vatican II and the meeting of Latin American bishops at Medellin, Colombia in 1968 were even more dramatic. The Catholic Church in Mexico took a more activist role in society, denouncing the government for its brutal suppressions of student protests. Remember, Britannica is not written by the Catholics. It's fucking, you think that, you're a fucking dumbass. It's called Britannica, you know? I'll give you a hint. The Anglican Church, the Freemasons, Britannica. But even they are forced to admit that the Masons were the bad guys historically. They are forced to admit that separation of church and state has meant that the Christians are at odds with the state. So whenever you see bankers or the states, you know, contributing and funding and pushing for genocide and CIA operations and bitch shit like that, keep in mind that these are liberal, secularist dogs, not Christians. It is impossible to be for the people and against Christianity. It goes on to say, advocating social justice and defending the rights of Native Americans and the poor. Wait, this isn't liberals defending Native Americans and the poor. This is the fucking church. Theologians and some bishops supported liberation theology and Christian-based communities, centers for studying the Bible, discussing social problems, and designing solutions to these problems were established throughout the country. At the same time, however, more traditional and conservative forces also became prominent. The controversial religious group Opus Dei assumed an increasingly important role in society, especially among the elite, and new episcopal appointments by Pope John Paul II strengthened conservative elements in the church. Along with the challenge of interpreting the decisions of Vatican II, the Roman Catholic Church in Mexico faced the aggressive proselytism of Protestant Christians, including Pentecostals, whose message had great appeal. So what you see here, I'm going to leave you with this thought. Don't confuse liberation from the church's perspective with liberalism. The church has always sought to get people to transcend or to liberate them from the oppressions of the state, to free them in the name of God. This one is classic. Masons and feminists love to say, oh, we liberated women and women didn't have the right to vote till after the slaves did. Oh, I'm touched. Well, what about this? The strength of Catholicism was demonstrated by the huge crowds that greeted John Paul II on each of his visits to Mexico starting in 1979
In 1992, Mexico and the Holy See resumed diplomatic relations, and anti-clerical laws still on the books, such as those proscribing the Jesuits and denying priests the right to vote, were repealed. So priests didn't have the right to vote, and it was repealed in 1992. 1992. And you want to pretend like, oh, these women have been so oppressed by, the Christian values and blah, blah, blah. It is the state doing the oppression. It is liberal, secularist dogs who are mad at Christian morality, and it goes back to the age of enlightenment. Fucking hypocrites. A feminist in Mexico celebrating that priests didn't have the right to vote, Oh, and let's not forget, the school of the Americas, right? Remember how the Pope was against Americanism? Well, what happened in some Latin American countries, even clergy who preached nonviolence were persecuted and killed by the military because they were perceived as sympathetic to leftist guerrillas. In El Salvador, for example, Archbishop Oscar Romero was assassinated in 1980 while celebrating Mass, and 3 American nuns were raped and murdered later that year. In 1989, the military killed 6 Jesuit priests. It's funny how these Masons pretend they're with the people. But if you preach Christian values and they come into conflict with the America or its proxies in Latin American countries, they rape nuns and murder priests. Who do you think is the good guy? Who do you think is in the right? Godless scum. Don't be surprised when the same American trash in the military-industrial complex, who are just 30 years older now, mind you, their family, their friends are still at it, are persecuting Christians here just like their proxies did abroad with American training and American weapons, just like they've always done in America. Separate church and state and persecute those who wish to put Christian morality into American law. That is the American way. Oh, how dangerous it is to be a Christian missionary helping the poor in a proxy, in an American proxy nation. Oh, how dangerous indeed, while a bunch of liberal scum play stupid about it and practice eugenics. The liberals aren't just okay with it. It's part of their greater liberal, progressive, eugenic, Margaret Sanger type agenda. They are trash. They are a bunch of Nancy Pelosi, Bill and Melinda Gates, Cass Sunstein, liberal, progressive trash. Why don't you see it? Fucking Rockefeller scum. Now, some of the liberals will accuse me of blaming liberals for what conservatives are doing. Part of being a liberal is being for big government, opposing Christians' values. They support gays and feminism over traditional Christian values. So let's look at this liberation theology. Liberation theology, a religious movement arising in late 20th century Roman Catholicism and centered in Latin America. It sought to apply religious faith. You see this? Religious faith by aiding the poor and oppressed through involvement in political and civic affairs. It stressed both heightened awareness of the sinful socioeconomic structures that cause social inequalities and active participation in changing those structures. Okay, so this is a religious perspective on why these things are wrong, because they are sinful moral convictions that come from religious convictions. one cannot truly say they are wrong, for example, unless you have a divine doctrine that says it's wrong. Otherwise, it's subjective. Liberation theologians believed that God speaks particularly through the poor. Remember, I constantly say, Christianity is the religion of the poor. Matthew 5, 10 through 12. Matthew 19, 23 through 24. Okay? This is what Jesus is saying. Okay? And that the Bible can be understood only when seen from the perspective of the poor. So who is really against the top 1%? A bunch of fucking liberal, secularist dogs that wish to remove prayer from school and religion from society and bring in moral relativism, masonry, feminism, and gay agendas, which are also part of the sinful socioeconomic structures where a bunch of gay liberals run the media and the entertainment industry, and they have mainstream rappers, delivering interviews and speeches that are pro-liberal, pro-establishment when you really look at it, such as gun control, gay rights, and feminism. How many of you think that the Christians involved in this liberation theology, the Catholics specifically in this case, are glad that the nuns got raped? Anybody? Obviously, no one's here to answer me, but you get the point. It's fucking stupid to think that, right? So obviously, these people have a high amount of respect for women. They let women in the church. They have duties of maintaining the church that are natural. All the studies show that women are better at maintaining how they bear the fucking kids. Who's supposed to be at home with the kids? I wonder. Is it supposed to be the guy who stuck his dick in a woman for a little while? Or the woman who carried the child in her belly for months? Who has the natural attachment and who is nature trying to say should raise the kids? I mean, come on now. Do you really need the Bible to tell you that? Anyway, they perceived that the Roman Catholic Church in Latin America was fundamentally different from the church in Europe, and so on and so forth. So I will grant that there are liberal Catholics that are behind this liberation theology. However, if they stray too far, if they meet Masons and leftist guerrillas halfway, as far as politically, then there are problems. And that is the problem with liberal Catholics and liberal Christians and Christian feminists. They have met the enemies of God halfway. They have made a deal with the devil. But they are absolutely right about everything. Until this last sentence, they perceived that the Roman Catholic Church in Latin America was fundamentally different from the church in England, and that the church, let's see, well, let us finish this. Okay, we'll see. We already know what they're going to get at because I've been talking about this for, 40 minutes now? But let's see it in their words. Oh, great. Free trial, kiss my ass, you're a bunch of bitches. Basically, what they're saying is, that you need to meet these people halfway. See, it is the Christian morality, and this, in a way, this is where I differ from the church in Rome, except for there's a differencing. I don't team up with Masons and all these enemies of God and try to be moderate Christians or something in order to bring more people into the church. I try to bring people to Christian morality, and I don't agree with the Pope being the head. I don't agree with the Trinity. Okay? Period. So yes, the problem is that liberal Catholics are still conservatives because it is a liberal attack on Christianity. I mean, let's be honest now. The major difference between the liberals and the conservatives is Christianity. And despite what the Protestants want to say about it, Catholicism is still the biggest faction of Christianity. They can cry, you know, that's part of their little game they play. They say, well, Catholics aren't Christians. Why? Because they want to break down the church and make it seem like their twist of Christianity is the truth. Very interesting. You see, what you see going on here is interesting indeed. Very, very interesting. There are very few Catholics, it seems, that take my point of view when it comes to everything, you know, not including, you know, the Pope and the Trinity. But when it comes to, let me just briefly knock this. I believe in the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. I don't believe they are one in the same. I believe God is separate from Jesus. And God, you know, the Holy Spirit is like, it's like saying, you know, am I the energy emanating from me? Am I me? Am I me in my entirety? Is the energy radiating from me as well? And is my son me? They are connected to me, absolutely. But I wouldn't put any of those things as powerful as me in my entirety. Therefore, the Father is God in his entirety. The Holy Spirit is the Holy Spirit of God, and the Son is the Messiah sent by God and not God Almighty. And he says that. He says, no one is good but God alone. In other words, no one is equal to God in his entirety. Anyway. So what you see here is that you have Christians who lean left, but they're still right. And they're still wrong about a great many things because they conform to communist agendas, to feminist agendas, to abortion and eugenic agendas. They take a scientific approach, a modernist approach, an American approach. And that goes back to what I was talking about earlier about the Pope's problem with Americanism and that archbishop in America during the time that he had a problem with. And his problem with the Jesuits, Ricci. You see, the conservatives are more right, but they're wrong about some issues as well. They're wrong about the Pope, the Trinity, and the importance of the poor. Whenever these liberal guys start talking about the poor, the conservative guys say, oh, you're a communist. And the problem is they're pretty much right because these people have been known to side with communists. So there's an internal conflict within the church, a power struggle. You see, the answer isn't to say, who's more right and I'm going to side with them. No, the answer is to only pursue the truth and do not conform. If you think I'm wrong, don't side with me because you agree with me about almost everything. Emphasize what you believe to be true. You know? I happen to know for a fact I'm right. But hey, you know, I think it's very important for you to follow what you believe is true, to pray to God, and you know, and not to listen to anybody, including me, when it comes to, you know, don't play, well, rather listen to me, but don't play follow the leader. Listen to me because I am correct. You know, find in your heart and soul that I'm correct. Don't do it just because you like me more than these guys or that I'm the top martial artist. Do it because you believe that I'm right. Okay, so going back to this, a lot of you people are very upset because I blame the liberals for these murders, right? Well, ask yourselves, whose philosophies allow for the murder of nuns and priests? Well, it is the Freemasons and their secret society allies in the right, who are more aligned with the New World Order liberal philosophy, as Satan as the liberator, than they are with Christian conservatives who are actually Christian. A real Christian conservative would never do that. But a neocon or something similar would, because he still has that liberal idea of secularism. You know, he's holding on to it tight. Now, I'm not saying that people on the right aren't secularists as well. In America, they certainly are, most of them. But who do you think cares more about secularism? A Christian who wants to see Christian morality in society? Or people who want to separate not just the church, but Christian morality from society? I mean, it's really a no-brainer. Okay, don't look at it as who you know, what administration was in charge during the time, whether it was Nixon or whatever. Okay, don't look at it that way. Look at it as whose philosophies allowed for this to happen. It was that Masonic Americanism, which aligns almost entirely with the left. So here's another place where you might understand why this difference came. You know, it says, the missionaries also failed to learn the languages of the Native American population, and therefore were unable to convert the indigenous peoples. Spanish efforts in the American West and Southwest did, however, lay the foundation for the eventual development of an organized church governed by an episcopal hierarchy. So, part of the reason why these people were using their culture to bring them in is because in order for them to communicate Christianity, or Catholicism in this case, more effectively to the indigenous peoples, you know, to these people, they needed to learn their language and culture, and in the process they learned their customs, religions, and traditions and ceremonies. So they would say things, well, think of this as this, and if it helps you to understand this Catholic concept, use this symbol to help you understand it. And I have conflicted. I don't like pagan symbols. I disagree, but on the same time, there's a part of me that says, you know, it is helpful. Now, you might see me. This video might be jumping around a bit. You know, it's gonna be a long video, probably about 50 minutes or so. I don't know. But I want you to understand that I'm going through this article at the most important parts. This article is, I'm gonna put the link in it. It's basically the age of Reformation and Counter-Reformation under the Roman Catholicism talk at Britannica.com. So when you look at this thing, right, many Americans, including Samuel F.B. Morse, the inventor of the Morse Code, almost certainly a Freemason and a Protestant, believed that immigration was part of a papal plot to take over the United States. Remember, at one point, the Catholic Church said, you know, banned Freemasonry and said that Catholics shouldn't be Masons. Anyway, in 1849, an anti-Catholic and anti-immigrant sentiment led to the formation of the Know Nothing Party. Opposition to Catholicism also led to acts of violence such as the burning of a convent in Boston in 1834 and the anti-Catholic riots in 1844. So Catholics were still immigrating in ways, right? But what happened before that? What happened maybe 4 years before the covenant in Boston? The Indian Removal Act was passed in 1830. So who was doing, you know, the Trail of, who was responsible for the Trail of Tears and the Indian Removal Act? It was Protestants, Freemasons, and their secret society allies. I mean, this is mainstream history here. The people who wanted to stay true to Christian morality weren't even fucking there when the Indians were being slaughtered by Protestant trash. And where they were on record the ones sticking up for the native population against the big government. So what is the commonality here? What are the similarities? It is people with Christian morality standing up for the native or indigenous peoples. And it was liberal trash, especially Age of Enlightenment Masonic trash, that were making them walk the Trail of Tears. So all you liberal natives, I've got one question for you. Does it make you feel proud to be a liberal, knowing that a bunch of secularist, liberal, progressive, eugenic Masons that made your ancestors walk the Trail of Tears would agree with you whole fucking heartedly? Except for, you know, No. I take that back. They would agree with you. Why? Because they'll let you have your casinos. They'll give you more government money, federal money for your reservations. Why? Because they put you there in the first fucking place. They want you nice and comfy. Well, you know, one thing I want to make clear is that, yes, there were Catholics fighting on both sides. You know, the Catholic Church did help advocate abolition. You know, there were a lot of Catholic abolitionists. Catholics were split on the issue like they're split on a lot of other issues. And, you know, I don't blame, you know, I don't look at it as, well, you know, these Native Americans, they're all liberals and so on. You know, some of them are conservatives. Some of them see it more like I do. There's a lot of blacks who are fucking, you know, liberals. Blacks are notorious. You know, the president is a black fucking liberal Democrat, you know, who's persecuting whistleblowers and shit. You know, so, you know, my thing is, there's one Native American person I have in mind. I'm not going to say who it is, you know, and basically I was at college and they were part of the anti-Christian crowd, you know. They want to blame the Christians for this, that, and the other thing. And I'm trying to impress upon everyone so no one makes that mistake, or no one who sees my videos at least, or talks to someone who's seen my videos, is that a lot of things are done in the name of Christianity. A lot of things are done in the name of everything you can imagine that aren't consistent with the actual teachings of Christianity. So, you know, and the Bible is a very difficult book to interpret. And that's why there are people who purposely misinterpret it, and there are people who argue, and they mean well, who don't really know what to think. You know, I'd go as far as to say no one has a perfect interpretation of the Bible. However, when it comes to morality, in general, these main teachings, don't be gay, don't be a feminist, don't abort your baby, don't kill, don't rape, don't steal, and all these things, you know, I don't think that anyone has any excuse for getting that wrong. So when you look at the history, right, it was these Protestants, these Masons, you know, and these Protestants, it's not a coincidence, there's fucking like over 2 million Masons in America right now. It was a bunch of Protestants being led by the Masons, okay? And it's supported by the Masons, you know, with their anti-Catholic sentiment, that were doing all these things. You know, in 1924, 6 years before the Indian Removal Act, a law passed limiting the immigration from Catholic countries. And it was religious bias. I mean, this country has a history of religious bias. And it wasn't, you know, in the 1700s, it's 1924. You know? Now, this is a really telltale right here. Even though Catholicism is the biggest religion in the world, Catholicism is bigger than other religions. It's like the size of Islam by itself, you know. Over 1 billion Catholics in the world. Yet, by the early 21st century, okay, Catholics accounted for 22% of the American population. That's it. Only 1 in 5 Americans are Catholic. Even though this is a Western nation. So when you consider the West, America is pretty much disproportionately non-Catholic. However, they have 200 dioceses for what it's worth, which is the 3rd largest in the world. But because of the strong anti-Christian sentiment, Catholics have failed to put their foot down and to really get a hold of this nation. And of course, it's not on the rise. You know, the philosophies of the elite are on the rise. And the people who historically stood up for the people who are at odds with the philosophies of the elite. I mean, forget about all the pogroms and all the different persecutions back and forth from both sides. Look at the philosophies. Catholics consistently were on the side of the people for hundreds of years. For you to look at Catholicism, you know, as a dominant force, you have to go back to like the 1500s or some shit, you know, you know. So, you know, yeah. When all's said and done, man, you can look at the decline of Catholicism in America in terms of the decline of American morality. Because I'm not, you got to realize one thing, that I'm not saying all Protestants are bad, or all Protestants are Freemasons, or all Protestant preachers are Freemasons. But what you do see, you know, is where secret societies touch, they corrupt. There are some Protestant churches that preach more of the Word of God than some Catholic churches. But the problem is that Masonry has thoroughly corrupted the Protestant world. It's hard to find good Protestant churches. And the Jesuits and other Catholic secret societies that have, over time, you know, they pretty much don't have the same kind of loyalty to the Pope, the papal infallibility ideas and doctrines. They actually have allegiance to the secret society world. And we see Jesuit symbolism in some of the Masonic lodges to this day as a result. And of course, we see the molestation. 10,000 cases of molestation. You know, 4% of American priests. So what is this, okay? You know, once you look at this historically, I'm sure you all can understand what has happened after you listen to everything I've said. Over time, the people who sided with the Masons and the communists and all the liberals in the Catholic Church, you know, and some people who pretend to be conservatives, over time are bleeding the Catholic Church from the inside. They're, you know, the Catholic Church as a structure, they are compromising its integrity from the inside. They are making it look bad from the inside. They have come to the conclusion that the best way for Protestants and their allies to defeat Catholicism is to become Catholics and do what these secret society dogs do and molest children with their New Age occultist philosophies, their Luciferian doctrine, and their satanic ways. To the point where there are some branches of the Church of Satan, and of Satanism rather, that teach that in order for you to be a priest in those branches, a priest, you have to first be a priest in the Catholic Church. And thus you see the pedophilia, just like with Michael Aquino and all these other Satanists who have been caught, you know, doing pedophilia and sacrificing children and whatnot. Now, I'm not saying every pedophile in the Catholic Church is a satanic priest in training or in a secret society. But I am saying that you would be an idiot to think they don't make up the majority of the cases. What has happened is that pedophiles have seen that this is going on. They may or may not understand why, but they see that the Catholic Church tends to pay people out, you know. In 2004, by 2004, the Catholic Church worldwide had paid out more than $1 billion in jury awards, settlements, and legal fees, leading some dioceses to consider protection under bankruptcy law. Okay? Bankrupting the Catholic Church and creating a den of wolves. Okay? Just like the Bible predicted, Mystery Babylon infiltrated the church. And I'd go as far as to say there are some people who, some of these people are Protestants in disguise, or they're pagan Catholics, if you will, pagans who, you know, family have been involved in the church for generations, perhaps, who see this as fulfilling Scripture. This goes deep, you know. There are some sickos who think that, you know, if they fulfill Scripture, they will speed up the coming of Christ. Now, I am not the expert on the history of the Catholic Church, but I have studied secret societies. I'm not even an expert on any individual secret society, mind you, but I have studied these things from a sociological perspective. Article after article, source after source, and there's things that I see that are consistent and I feel obliged to address. This is an interesting picture of an igloo-shaped Roman Catholic church. You know, it's very interesting when you look at Truman and the bombs, right? The Catholic Church in Japan suffered during World War II, as did all of the country. And in 1945, Nagasaki, the oldest center of Catholicism in Japan, was largely destroyed when an atomic bomb was dropped on it. Isn't that interesting? That this Protestant type Freemason, of all the places in Japan, he decided to drop it on the center of Catholicism in Japan. Oh, make no mistake that there are people in the government getting at their religious adversaries, you know, in Christianity. It's like inter-Christianity war, an inter-Christian war. You know, within Christianity, there's different factions still fighting and still doing little things. You know, they're like, oh, we're going to drop a bomb in Japan. Where should we drop it? It's this Protestant Masonic president, you know, bitter, eugenic look on his face. Where should we drop it? Let's see. The Catholic Center seems like a good place. His advisor's like, well, why there? Why there? Never mind why. Just do it. Piece of shit.